Why is the over-55s cohort the most likely to vote no? Is it from growing up amidst latent racism? I'm 67 and this horrifies me that young people who are our future will vote yes and conservative older Australians will sabotage the vote. Firstly, I just want to look a little bit more closely at the polling that they're referring to here in this question. It's last week's Guardian Essential poll. Lorena, can you tell us a bit about that polling?
Okay, so that poll showed that the support for the Indigenous voice has dipped, and we all know that that's, there's no poll after poll that's shown that that's the case now. 47% of respondents were in favour of the vote of yes, 43 opposed, and 10% who said they were unsure. And it's true that there's a generational sort of divide. Younger people are much more in favour of it. They can't understand why this is such a hard thing for the country to do. Older people maybe come with different prejudices. They had a different experience growing up and don't know us, haven't met us, are a bit unsure and fearful.
I want to go to Kerry on that point. Kerry, you wrote in the Voice to Parliament Handbook that you yourself grew up largely ignorant of the true history of this country for a time, and I'm wondering whether you share this reader's concerns that older voters might lean no because of lack of education or because of the kind of heightened racism of the time that they grew up in.
I think that's too simplistic, and no, I don't accept that. And even a word like sabotage, that over 50s might sabotage the outcome. A lot of those over 50s will go to that vote with believing that and hoping that their vote is going the right way, that they're actually trying to cast their vote in a responsible way. And I think that you'd expect some element of sort of quote-unquote safety and conservatism in the way older people might approach things, but that doesn't mean that their conservatism is reflected in a no vote. And the argument, I believe, is a strong argument that this is actually a conservative, pretty safe proposition. Despite what the no campaigners are saying, I see no risk, and that is borne out by the experts. But the young people, I've always felt that the key to ridding us of prejudice is education, and you see that in younger Australians. You see that in the way they go after climate change as an issue, as reflected in that last election's vote in those teal seats. I think that young people have grown up in an environment of less racial prejudice.
Talei, you've been working with the AEC to increase voter enrolment. What do you see as the power of young voters, particularly in this referendum?
I have to agree with Kerry about, education being the best base for it. I think as, this younger generation have grown up around a different education system where you increasingly have been taught Australia's true history and its colonial past and how that past has impacted the current social and economic outcomes for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And, that's definitely going to be at the back of their minds when they go to vote. But also, that education isn't equitable across the country. In remote Australia, it's, the schooling system isn't as great as it would be in urban areas. That's why we have to send so many of our kids to, boarding schools down south or across the country. We're not able to stay in our communities, and we get this better access to education, and, other Australians get to know more about remote Australians through that. But it's an interesting one because despite young Australians making up so much of the population, we're not really in the cohort of people who are, owners of big publications or media enterprises. We're not always at the seat in Parliament or high courts and things like that. So, we're voters, but we're more likely to be influenced than be the big influencers in this big national discussion.
I want to go back to an element of this reader question, which is a concern around racism in the campaign. They're clearly concerned that it will be a deciding factor in the outcome. Are you, Lorena?
Yeah, I am. I am. And it's already playing out in playgrounds and in our lives already. The Anipat talked at Uluru in May about this avalanche of racism that we're all experiencing, and I think that that's that's very true. We are all feeling that, and racism will be an element in this campaign. There's no hiding from that fact. I think that what the No campaign does is give people an opportunity to couch their racist views in an argument that allows them to say no without feeling guilty about that prejudice. It's definitely an element. I mean, many of our mob I talk to feel like this is a referendum on our right to live in our own country. And it's not what the Yes campaign wants, but it is what people are feeling. Because we are asking the 90-odd% of non-Indigenous Australia, the rest of Indigenous Australia, to vote on our rights, on our future in the land, and that is a huge burden that very small minority of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are carrying. So it does feel very personal, and while to many mainstream people who've never met a blackfella in their lives might think of this as an abstract concept, to us it's a very real thing that we are waking up with every day, and racism is a part of that. We can't get around that.
Talei, do you agree with that I suppose this is about one question? There is a set question for the referendum, but it can sometimes feel like it's more broad than that it's about the rights of Aboriginal people to be here in this country, or that it's, about our civil rights as well.
For us in remote areas, I think what's important to note is the structural racism, not just, the racism that's been talked about previously, but structural racism in these systems that keep our populations at a disadvantage. Things, especially like enrolling, for instance, the reason that we had to partner with the Australian Electoral Commission to enrol more community members in a community partnership style way was because we have very little driver's licensing musters, and you need a driver's license and IDs to be able to enrol and get on the electoral roll when you don't have those services physically in where you are, or even in the region where you are. That's increasingly harder. Births, deaths and marriages, people can go down to the hospital or the service provider and sign up and get your, start getting your IDs sorted. These things make it difficult. Like, these services aren't always available or readily available where we are. That lack of access to telecommunications, better telecommunications and internet is a reason why we can't get many people enrolled through those mechanisms. So we have to rely on our community members to be trained up to then enroll people to vote. Those are the structural issues that are causing us, or they're making it less likely for individuals to enrol, to have a say on this voice. Those are the issues that individuals are trying to relate this conversation to when they talk about the voice. They're, these issues that we live through in remote areas and, in other areas as well. It's those things that I think people really want to see change. It's the structural racism that we have to deal with every day, not just the micro aggressions.
The way this campaign has been conducted has been an open invitation to the racists in our nation to come out of the woodwork and vent. And now with social media, they're able to do that without having to look you in the eye as they do it. They can do it anonymously. They can do it in a cowardly way. And when I heard Peter Dutton accusing the Prime Minister of re-racialising Australia, it was the pot calling the kettle black. The truth is that it is precisely that kind of terminology that has been, I think, a part of the process of inviting the racists amongst us to come out and be heard. And I think that you see it too in the... you hear things like, it's going to mean that more white people will claim to be Indigenous so they can jump on the gravy train, like as if there's going to be some amazing flow of cash. We hear some people say, look, I'm worried because I'm told that we're all going to have to pay rent to continue to live in the houses we own. We're going to have to pay rent to Indigenous people. These things are just fantasies, but they follow a pattern. They follow the pattern of the Mabo case, where we were all told, we non-Indigenous Australians living in urban Australia, that we were going to lose our backyards. Where when the Wick judgment came out, The pastoralists were being told that they were going to lose their property to Indigenous people. Those things just didn't happen. In the plebiscite on marriage equality, we were told that it was going to be the end of religious freedom. It's about, and you can look at the Republican model, the way the Republican referendum was run by those who didn't want it. It was about divide and defeat. You defeat by dividing the people who are otherwise likely to vote yes. You create confusion, you sow misinformation, and you sow fear, and you win. Now that is what is behind the No campaign in this referendum, and it's reflected in this pamphlet.